Rachel, and this is my YouTube channel, Give Me Some Sugar, where we talk about how to live your life to the fullest alongside diabetes. So today we are going to talk about Symlin. So aside from insulin, there really aren't a lot of medication options for people with type 1 diabetes that are approved by the FDA. If you look at the medications for people with type 2 diabetes, there's like 70 plus medications for them to use along with insulin, whereas a lot of studies haven't been done with those medications for people with type 1 diabetes. And that's really unfortunate because people with type 1 diabetes can experience similar things that people with type 2 diabetes experience, such as like insulin resistance and weight gain, things like that make it a lot harder to manage blood sugars. Symlin is an option that's a little bit easier to get a hold of because it's not considered off-label. What is Symlin? Symlin is an injectable medication that is taken before meals. It is what we call an amylin analog. Amylin is a neuroendocrine hormone that is produced by beta cells. So your beta cells are responsible for producing insulin, glucagon, and amylin. For whatever reason, in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, we only really supplement with insulin, which is unfortunate because you're missing two other hormones, which are pretty important. Amylin is responsible for keeping control of your postprandial or your after meal blood sugar levels. You may notice that, if you were to test a blood sugar of somebody without type 1 diabetes, their blood sugars tend to stay more steady after they eat. This is again due to a bunch of different things like just the super quickness of their endogenous insulin, but also the fact that they have amylin available to them. So amylin slows gastric emptying, so it keeps their stomach from just like flooding out the food right when it's been digested. And so in a person with type 1 diabetes, food moves a lot more quickly out of the stomach, which contributes to higher blood sugars after meals. And it also just makes you feel hungry, like right after you eat, and it's very frustrating. And a lot of the time this is why you may struggle with weight, you may struggle like with emotional eating, honestly, because you're just constantly hungry. The only way you really will end up feeling satiated is through volume. When I first tried Symlin, I was like, holy shit, is this what it feels like to feel satisfied? It was crazy. So it's really, actually, if you've had type 1 diabetes your whole life, it's kind of crazy. You may never have experienced that feeling of satiety. Usually I'm used to just feeling like stuffed if that's the point where I'm feeling full. Again, keeps blood sugars lower after meals and keeps you feeling full even hours after you've eaten and everything has digested. A lot of the time this is a good option if you are trying to lose weight or you're just really struggling with high blood sugars after meals, and through pre-boluses and everything you're still having like a lot of trouble with it. So it's a good option for that. Typically how we take Symlin is it's just like an insulin pen for the most part, except it doesn't twist, and it's got micrograms instead of unit, and it also pulls out like this. And there are 4 different doses. So typically the endocrinologist, and this varies with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, but if you have type 1 diabetes, you'll start out at 15 micrograms, and then you'll start to increase it until you feel like you're at the right dose. And when you know you're there, you'll start to feel this kind of like fullness after about 15 minutes of taking it. You will also likely need to adjust your insulin doses in the way you give insulin, because remember, it's going to slow down the food from emptying out of your stomach and therefore stop or slow down glucose from hitting your bloodstream. Because of that, you're not going to want to pre-bolus your insulin. You will likely have to experiment with either giving it during the meal, right before the meal, or sometimes even after the meal. You may need less insulin. Your doctor may recommend 20 to 30% less insulin to start, just to experiment. Personally, I didn't really need an adjustment in the amount of insulin I needed, but rather just the timing of it all. So you'll have to kind of just experiment with that if you start taking the medication. Again, the timing of the insulin is going to have to change. You'll need to kind of consider experimenting with maybe an extended bolus, or some people actually switch to regular insulin, which is a lot slower than the rapid acting insulin like Novolog and Humalog. So that is another option for taking with Symlin. All right, some things to note about Symlin. The most common side effect is nausea. There really aren't like a lot of other side effects that you'll end up feeling other than nausea. And honestly, that nausea is kind of an indicator that it's working. Like for me, it feels a bit like a sour stomach sort of situation. Like I'll give it to myself and 15 minutes later, I sort of feel like, oh, I don't really feel like eating right now, which for some people is very unpleasant, and that's totally understandable. But for me, I don't mind it too much. And a lot of the time after you've been taking it for a while, that nausea will subside and you won't have that trouble anymore. So probably for the first week or so, that may be something you experience. Obviously, if it's really awful and you just can't take it, then that would be the time to stop taking the medication or to go back on the dose wherever that nausea starts happening. You also do not want to take Symlin with high fat meals. Don't take Symlin when you're eating pizza or something that just is higher in fat, like Chinese takeout. You want it to be, because it's going to slow it down so much that it's going to be completely unpredictable. So this is just for like the general balanced food that you're eating, not necessarily like gigantic meals with a lot of fat, a lot of protein, and things that kind of throw off the timing. So consider the fact that you do not want to take this medication when you have something like gastroparesis, because again, this is going to slow down your gastric emptying. And when you have gastroparesis, that's already a huge issue for you. So this would not be the medication for you to take. Another really important fact to consider about Symlin is because your stomach is not going to empty as quick. Should you experience hypoglycemia, you're going to want to treat that low differently than you normally would with something like juice or something that hits your stomach and then goes into your bloodstream. So you're gonna wanna have glucagon on hand, glucose tabs, or like gel. And the reason for that is you want something that will, carbohydrates actually digest they should digest mostly if you are chewing properly in your mouth. Glucose tabs and gel are going to dissolve really quickly in your mouth and be able to get to your bloodstream a lot quicker. The glucagon obviously is injected into your body intramuscularly, and sometimes if you are taking it consciously, you can take it subcutaneously and take like a mini gluc. So I've done that before where I was experiencing a low. I hadn't really gotten used to Symlin, and I took a little bit of glucagon just to bring up the blood sugar because the juice just wasn't going to hit my bloodstream quick enough. So that is something that's kind of scary. If you have a hypoglycemia phobia of some sort, or if you don't have a CGM and you don't feel comfortable, then this would not be the medication for you, because it does put you at higher risk of having low blood sugars that are a little bit more difficult to treat and you have to be a little bit more careful with. But as long as you have those alternative low treatments on hand, then you should be able to figure out how it works for you and everything. And then the final point is, of course, that this medication is very expensive. So should your insurance actually cover the medication, which can also be an issue, a lot of the time people find that it's very expensive. I'm going to put a link in the description box for a savings card that you can use. It's one of those from the manufacturer that takes off some of the copay, if not all of the copay, and the only downside is that you can only use it if you have commercial insurance, so a non-government assisted insurance. So if you have Medicare, Medicaid, or something like that, it will not work. I am looking for patient assistance programs for Symlin. I will put a link in the description if I find one, but I'm having a bit of trouble looking for one at this moment. If you have seen one or have used one, definitely let me know in the comments so we can help people get the medication they need. All right, so that was a very quick introduction to Symlin and what it does. And if you have any questions, certainly let me know in the comments or shoot me an email. I will see you in the next video.